TikTok's U.S. business would be controlled by an investor consortium, including Oracle, Silver Lake, and Andreessen Horowitz. That's according to reports. So we got the big phone call today, David Bahnsen. We got all sorts of issues on the table. We got the trade stuff. TikTok, is it done? The president seemed to suggest they got the approval. Maybe some other things were saying it's a framework still. I don't really know. What do you think about it?
You know, the whole thing bothers me to some degree because, first of all, Congress actually did something they barely ever do last year. They acted and passed a law that got signed into law the way you're supposed to in the Constitution.
They still remember how to do that, do they?
They do, but then the problem is the president just decided to do his own thing, and he keeps kind of punting the enactment. Now, look, I have all kinds of opinions about government involvement in private business, and I'm concerned on this affair, not because I want to be defensive of TikTok, because I don't. I can't stand how much teenagers use it. But I do not want the president of the United States, whoever it is, bringing in business allies into a private deal, saying that the government's going to make a lot of money on this, like playing role of investment banker. This is just not the way us conservatives have generally thought that the government's supposed to interact in the business sector.
Should we just pull the plug on this thing?
If there is definitive threat, heck yeah.
Yeah.
Sure. Why not? Look, the number one job of the President of the United States is to protect the country.
See, we can't talk about the national security threat right now when we just got done pretending that the Nippon Steel deal was for national security.
Right.
You can't say T-shirts being made in Vietnam is a national security issue and then keep credibility. But, you know, it's interesting. You're talking about the concern of the CCP having access to the data. I would imagine we're 5 for 5 in being opposed to that, being afraid of that. If Barack Obama was president right now, would everyone be okay with the United States having access to the algorithm, controlling the algorithm? I mean, it was not that long ago the conservatives were afraid not just of foreign governments, but the domestic government controlling such a thing.
You just made my point.
But, Gary, your point is so brilliant about the names that start get thrown out, like, hey, you get a little piece, you get a piece. And I think you said a couple names hypothetically, Larry, John. Mark Andreessen was a supporter of the campaign. Larry Ellison is a supporter of the president. It's not a good look.
And by the way, this is a good look. This is not a rib on them. Larry Ellison's brilliant. Mark Andreessen's. They have created more wealth than beyond the beyond.
And how is the algorithm going to change when the app is not going to have to be re-downloaded?
Press a button here and press a button.
And for me, and, you know, I support the president on many issues, this was a bit of a flip-flop.
Well, it was a
so
big
I agree in pulling the plug altogether. If you think it's a national security problem and you don't want to have it here and they're still going to have a paw in it, then
But I don't think they can pull the plug unless they can prove and establish it's a national security risk. I trust Senator Cotton. They need to make the case to the American people. My only point is you can't call everything a national security risk and then expect us to believe you when you say something is.
And on the flipping, I just want to point out that when he wanted to pull the plug, Joe Biden said, no, TikTok should stay. And then when Trump flipped and said, no, we should find a way to work it out, Joe Biden said we should ban it. So you've got this flip-flopping and this polarization.
It speaks to Gary's point about the government not being involved in it because they have their own partisan agendas. TikTok was very helpful for the president in his campaign.
David, I want to get your take on this. Sometimes when we don't understand things, it's difficult to kind of foresee how it's going to all play out. But we're talking about a new revolution in technology here that hasn't necessarily harmed us in the past the way people thought it would. Do you believe that about AI?
I believe a few different things at once. I want there to be American leading technology, and I believe that the history of this is abundantly clear. Some jobs get lost and more jobs get created. It happened in the digital revolution. It happened in the industrial revolution. I don't want to be Luddite, and I believe creative destruction that leads to greater jobs is good. I'm a little afraid that there is this idea that we can trust some of the big tech folks to run with it when I'm not sure they've been totally trustworthy, and then they get to play some regulatory arbitrage where they get a deregulated environment to build AI, then they're going to come in and ask government to bring in regulation and squash the little guy. And I don't know if I've seen this before or not, but it feels like I have. I still think that the part you're referring to that I agree with is that technology advances activity for human beings and opportunity. Where things have been problematic along the way is when big tech has formed alliances with government. My problem is not with technology. The issue about Zuckerberg having been bad to the Trump administration and now he's playing good and he might be bad later, the problem is why should the government be in the position to empower so much, whether they're a friend or foe of the administration? And I think that we don't, and to Brian's point of how quickly social media moved, I think that AI right now, they're trying to get regulatory advantages relative to other businesses. Who's paying for this intellectual property? IP theft is still a thing. They have not solved for it. There's too much trust with people that aren't trustworthy. And that's where I believe that prudence is recommended, but not in a Luddite way, Gary, not in being afraid of technology and human progress. I'm saying in a responsible way that acknowledges we want growth, we want competition, we want to beat China. But I don't trust the big tech folks to not try to create unfair advantages
Have you noticed
themselves.
a lot of the... And by the way, as much as today is Friday, Zuckerberg will flip-flop if a Democrat wins.
Right.
In,
no, I agree with you. I agree.
And you know why he would do that? Not merely because he is not politically trustworthy. None of them are. He'll do that because the government has the power for it to be advantageous to him.
Right.
The solution is not to tell Mark Zuckerberg to pick a lane. He's going to go for what's in his self-interest.
Right.
The solution is to not empower government to enable that kind of behavior.
Yes, I don't blame him. He's working the system.
That's it.
And that's what he needs to do.
Adam Smith talked about it 250 years ago.
Tariffs are a tax, and now to talk about, we're going to collect all these taxes from our companies and potentially our consumers. We're going to return it back to the consumers. I'm not so sure that's supposed to be in the president's pocket.
Well, if you go far enough back in the Wayback Machine,
we could do that.
You'd be getting tariff revenue as the main way to fund the government.
That is true.
Our Wayback Machine was tariffs at one point.
And government spending was 1% of GDP.
Also, I like that.
Okay, well, we got 24% to go.
We're a little different on that. Congress gave the executive avenues to do tariffs. So the Supreme Court might say you can't do it through IEPA, but that doesn't mean the president can't do it through other sections of other mechanisms. He did that in his first term. So it may be the case that IEPA goes the way of the dodo bird on this one, but it doesn't mean the president can't do tariffs.
It matters. It matters what the rationale is. If he wants to pretend that it's national security with steel and aluminum, there's a prima facie case for it. I don't agree with it. But what I cannot believe anyone would take seriously is saying that coffee in Brazil is a national security issue. And he would have to get it renewed. I think it's every 45 days and others are every 6 months.
It's much more onerous.
Much more onerous.
And he said that.
But to Gary's point, what if next time we have a recession, they go, there's a national emergency, we have to go do a billionaire's tax and just confiscate from people. And they go, well, you can't do it without Congress. They go, yeah, we can. It's an economic emergency.
Well, now it's closed.
And by the way, what they're calling a national emergency here is a trade deficit. We've had a trade deficit for 59 of the last 60 years.
And also
that means everything
Bensel.
is an emergency.
But let me ask you this. Now we're at the precipice of possibly the tariffs really going away. And Secretary Bassett and President Trump are warning that the consequences of that at this point, at this juncture, as they're negotiating these massive trade deals with the UK on the cusp with China, they're saying that the consequences could potentially be catastrophic.
Well, it isn't true. It wouldn't be catastrophic. It would be wonderful for a lot of small businesses that have been very damaged by the tariffs. But they already, and I've talked to the Treasury Department about this at great length, they already have a plan to pivot for what the rationale will be. It will be more onerous, but there won't be anything catastrophic. I think that's them trying to work the refs a little bit. Some of the tariffs won't be able to come back. That'll be a good thing. But to the extent it does create administrative burden, I'm sorry. You have to do the right thing the right way. And in our country, that's through the United States Constitution, and that includes Article 1, Section 7, Article 1, Section 8. Congress has the power to tax.
You can't undo all the foreign investment that is coming in. You can't undo the fact that the big, beautiful bill sets parameters for companies to manufacture here, and companies are trying to do that, and progress has been made in that realm. So even if they went away, I still think there's a 25% win here if we want to try to score it.
Jackie, I kind of want to push back on one thing you said. The big, beautiful bill was passed by Congress, and it has certain incentives in it for domestic manufacturing. So if the Congress passed it and that happens, it's a good thing. When you talk about foreign investment, what foreign investment has come in? Them buying things from Americans? They've been doing that forever. We're the largest services exporter in the world. There are a lot of companies that have gone to the White House and hugged the president and made announcements, but there's also companies that have announced that and haven't put single dollar in yet. We need 6, 12, 18 months to see what real increase of capital expenditures come in. I think that too much of this has been driven by frameworks of deals, by press releases and announcements. I'm totally sympathetic to the president's style of negotiating here. But the reality is I'm not thinking right now about the small business somewhere that does benefit. I'm thinking about the small business that is hurting from it. American manufacturers import 40% of their unprocessed goods. They're getting killed. And that, to me, is an area about policy. But what we started off talking about was the legal side. And I think that even if Gary and I didn't feel the way we do about tariffs, like if I was a big pro-tariff guy, I'd still be against the way they did it.
Where there's strong demand in anything, supply usually shows up. And usually, if there's strong demand, there's pretty darn good pay for the instructors to meet that. That's the hope, but you don't know how it's going to play out. Right?
When there's strong demand, supply doesn't often show up. It always shows up, as sure as gravity is still a law of nature. The issue is that there's incentives the other way that distort the market because they're providing these pensions and union benefits and guarantees, the student loan aspect of the higher education scam. So there's anti-market forces distorting what would otherwise be a very healthy market. Mike Rowe, by the way, is a national treasure.
Love him.
He is a hero. And what he has done here to advocate for trade schools and eliminate the indoctrination that goes on in some of these liberal arts programs at our universities, not to mention the partying that goes on. What I would say is that the market is going to prevail here. There will be, because there already is more demand for this area of the market.
The Trump administration has been trying to pull back a lot of money from colleges and universities. I think it does get to that issue of tilting the playing field. The universities push back. They say, wait a sec, you're violating our rights to that money somehow. But that actually seems to be an important part of this. You do kind of have to retilt the field back to a level place where it's the thumb of government is not on 4-year higher education.
And we're talking about the unlimited money that's going to the universities directly, but I'm talking about the loan money to the students.
Yes.
Why is federal money eligible for an undergrad degree and not for some of the trade schools?
Yep.
Yes.
That to me is the unfair dynamic.
You mean $250,000 to somebody who's going to make $30,000 a year?
Yeah.
That's right. Something like that, Gary.
Return on investment.
David Bahnsen, great to have you this hour. Always a pleasure.